David. Module 7 covers dispute resolution and termination. Can you tell us a bit about what's in it?
Yeah, well, it tells you the procedures to go through if there is a dispute in relation to the ISPA, and also how the whole ISPA can be ended, whether it's because of breach of obligation by either side or certain other circumstances.
Why is this important?
Well, it's always important to look ahead throughout the life of a contract and think about what might happen if it was ended, either voluntarily or because of some other circumstance, and think how you'd survive as an organisation following the contract end.
So how long would the ISPA usually run for?
Well, it has a minimum term of 3 years, and either side can give 6 months' notice to terminate either at the 3-year point or later, but MOJ consent will be needed whenever that's done.
So can the ISPA be ended for other reasons?
Yes, it can. So if the contract between the MOJ and the Tier 1 organisation terminates for any reason, that will automatically terminate the ISPA. Also, if either party to the ISPA becomes insolvent, that will lead to termination. If there's what's called a material breach of the ISPA, which could be one event or a series of events, that also could lead to termination of the ISPA. It's also worth remembering that breach doesn't just apply to the subcontractor. Potentially, if the contractor itself is not paying the organisation as it should, then that could be a breach that the subcontractor could take action on.
So if that did happen and the contract ended, what would be the implications for the organisation?
Well, there could be a number of things. So one is your staff. You may have to make people redundant. That could be quite costly, particularly if people have tupied into your organisation from another organisation with the valuable rights such as continuity of employment they may have. Another issue would be your premises from which you operate the ISPA. So you need to ensure that you've got flexible arrangements that you could leave if your ISPA terminated. So similarly with suppliers, if you've got people supplying services to your premises like cleaners or photocopy contracts, things like that, which are very much key to the operation of the ISPA, you need to have flexibility to end those arrangements quickly if your ISPA ends. And finally, of course, don't forget that if the termination is for breach by your organisation, the contractor may take action against you for payment of damages, which could be very costly.
But 3-year contracts are usually a good thing. Are they in this case?
Well, they often are a good thing, but I think the problem in this case is that there's such flexibility for the contractor to make massive changes to the contract, either increasing the volume of service or indeed massively reducing it. So you might be left with a fairly large workforce geared up for a high level of service, but actually the service has been massively reduced, and you'd have to react to that and yet still be tied in for at least 3 years.
So what about dispute resolution?
Well, the ISPA contains some fairly standard procedures really designed to help to resolve disputes at the lowest level. So they start with discussions between contract representatives, if necessary moving up to chief executives, and ultimately there's the possibility of either side taking a matter to court. But it's really a mediation or alternative dispute resolution procedure that's designed to avoid going to court if at all possible.
So if an organisation's thinking of entering contract, what do they need to do?
Well, they should see how far they can renegotiate certain things. So perhaps try and negotiate that service levels won't increase or decrease by more than a specified percentage, perhaps in a 12-month period. Also, they need to be very clear, particularly for charities, that the services can't be expanded more broadly than their own purposes would allow. Or finally, they could think about whether to use a separate limited company as a subsidiary to operate the contract to isolate the risks.